The rain had been falling for hours. Soft. Relentless. Like the sky itself couldn't hold back what the heart refused to say. Tokyo was quiet that night. The streets shimmered beneath the glow of wet neon signs. And somewhere between the crowd and the sound of umbrellas closing, stood Shen Yue waiting. She didn't know why she came. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was love. Or maybe it was something in between, that quiet ache that lingers when a story never really ends. The message had been short. If you're still here, meet me at the old cafe by Shibuya Crossing. No name. No apology. But she knew who it was. She always knew. It had been almost 3 years. 3 years since the silence between them became louder than words. Since they walked away from each other, pretending it didn't hurt. But the truth was, it never stopped hurting. The rain grew heavier. People rushed for cover. But Shen Yue stayed. Under her small umbrella. Her eyes searched every passing face. And with every minute that passed, hope felt a little heavier. She remembered the last time they spoke. It was winter in Seoul. He had called her stubborn. She had called him heartless. Neither of them meant it. But pride. Pride is the sharpest weapon lovers ever wield. And that night, they both walked away bleeding. Now, as the clock struck 9, she wondered if history was repeating itself. If waiting again, in the rain, was just her way of reopening old wounds. But something inside her whispered, "Stay a little longer." So she did. Meanwhile, across the city, Wang stood on the edge of a rooftop terrace, watching the same rain fall over Tokyo. His phone buzzed, another message from his manager, asking if he'd make it to the brand dinner. He didn't reply. His mind was elsewhere. It had been months since he last thought of that cafe. But tonight, the memories came uninvited. The laughter, the arguments, the way she used to steal sugar packets just to make him smile. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an old letter, folded, worn, edges smudged from time. It was never sent. The words on it were an apology. A quiet one. The kind meant to be spoken face to face, but never found the courage to leave the heart. He read the first line again, whispering to himself, "I'm sorry for not listening when you were trying to stay." The wind carried the words away. But for the first time in years, he realized that running from pain never truly erased it. It just postponed it. By the time he reached Shibuya, the rain had softened again. Gentle, steady, like it was waiting too. He saw her immediately. She hadn't changed much. Same posture. Same way of tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. But her eyes, they looked lonelier. She was staring at the crosswalk lights, unmoving, as if afraid that if she blinked, he'd disappear again. He didn't know how long he stood there watching her. Long enough to remember what regret felt like. And then, finally, he walked forward, step by step, through the blur of umbrellas and headlights, until the crowd thinned, and it was just the two of them. Again, she turned at the sound of his footsteps. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of rain filled the air between them. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like the silence that follows an unsent goodbye. "Hi," he said quietly. Her lips parted, but no words came. The years of distance suddenly collapsed into this one fragile moment, and neither knew where to begin. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she finally said. He looked at her, rain droplets catching in her lashes. "I wasn't sure I deserved to." The words trembled, like they'd been waiting too long to be spoken. She looked down. "You disappeared, Dylan." No explanation. No closure. Just gone. He exhaled slowly. "I thought walking away would protect you from all the noise around me. The headlines. The rumors. I didn't want you dragged into it again." She shook her head. "You didn't protect me. You just left me wondering if I ever mattered." His throat tightened. There were 100 things he wanted to say, but only one came out. You did. The words were soft, but they hit her harder than any apology could. He took a step closer. I thought silence would heal what words couldn't. But it only made the distance louder. The rain soaked through his coat, but neither seemed to notice. I waited for you, she whispered. I waited longer than I should have. He closed his eyes, his jaw trembling as he said, I know. There was pain in his voice, the kind that only comes from knowing you broke something you can never fix. He reached into his pocket and held out the letter. I wrote this a long time ago. I never sent it. Her hands hesitated before taking it. She unfolded the paper slowly. Ink slightly faded, edges wrinkled. The first line read, I'm sorry for being too proud to say I was wrong. She read in silence. The rain dripped from the edge of her umbrella, splashing softly against his shoes. When she finally looked up, her voice was barely a whisper. Why now? Because I saw your interview last month, he said. You said, sometimes forgiveness doesn't need an audience. Her eyes softened. That was about you. I know. The traffic lights changed from red to green, but neither moved. The world went on around them. Umbrellas brushing, car horns echoing, but their little corner of Tokyo stayed still. He wanted to tell her he still loved her, but he also knew love wasn't always enough. So instead, he said the only thing he could. I'm sorry. The words came out shaky, but they carried the weight of everything he'd left unsaid. For all the nights she cried. For all the texts he never answered. For the goodbye that wasn't one. She nodded, tears mixing with the rain. It still hurts, she whispered. I know, he said. I wish I could change it. She smiled faintly. But maybe some stories aren't meant to be rewritten. Letter and handed it back. Keep it, he said softly. It belongs to you. She hesitated, then slipped it into her bag. Thank you, she murmured. He wanted to ask her to stay, but he didn't. Because part of love is knowing when to let someone go, even if it breaks you. As she turned to leave, he said quietly, Shen Yue. She paused. Her shoulders stiffened slightly. He smiled sadly. You look beautiful when it rains. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Goodbye, Dylan. And with that she walked away. He stood there, watching her disappear into the crowd. The letter's ghost still lingering in his chest. The apology finally spoken. The wound still open. But this time, it didn't feel like regret. It felt like truth. Later that night, she reached her hotel. Her clothes still damp. Her heart even heavier. She placed the letter on the desk, unfolded it once more, and traced her finger over the last line. If you ever wait for me again, I promise I'll come running. A tear slid down her cheek. She whispered to no one, You're too late. Miles away, Dylan sat by the window of his apartment, watching the same rain that had seen them both through. He replayed the moment in his mind. Her eyes, her voice, the silence that said more than words ever could. And then, quietly, he smiled. Because even if forgiveness never came, at least she knew he was sorry. The rain stopped before dawn. The streets glistened. The city began to wake. Somewhere out there, two people carried the same ache. Separate now, but connected by a single night, a single apology, and a kind of love that refused to fade.